This is Howard Cooper from Rapid Change Works, and today I wanted to share something a lot more personal than I've shared in the past. Many of you will know that I work as a change worker, and I bill myself as a rapid change consultant. And sometimes I've been on the odd podcast or two, and I've spoken to some clients or two, and I've kind of shared my background, what it is that happened for me on a personal level that created the passion that I have for helping people through mental health related challenges. And I actually thought, rather than kind of trying to appear as though I'm some sort of superhuman with the answers to everyone else, I'd also just kind of open up a little bit and share with you all my own background in terms of mental health and some of the struggles that I've had over the years. Which I believe also gives me a different perspective and enables me now to be able to help people a little better. So I haven't scripted this at all, and I haven't really given a huge amount of thought as to exactly what I was going to say and how it's going to come out, but simply just I had the desire to want to share. So let me take you back, because I'm now, as I record this, I'm 38. So I'm going back a little way. I'm going back to when I was 16 years old, and I have to tell you, my childhood, my upbringing was pretty good. You know, like I got two siblings. I was a middle child, and people used to joke about middle child syndrome, and never really been sure what that is. Something about not being the baby, and not being new terrain, metaphorically speaking. So you're always caught in the middle. Feel maybe alone. Who knows? But like any child, just pretty kind of normal and nothing dramatic. But when I was about 15, 16, I remember I was going away on a camp. It was a summer camp with my peers, and really just feeling increasingly kind of anxious about being away from home. I remember we were shopping about a week, 2 weeks before somewhere. I think it was Morrison's supermarket for things that I would need to take away on this trip. And I can't explain it any more than the lights seemed strange to me, like brighter than normal. They were almost kind of hurting my eyes. And I remember thinking, what's going on? Like, this doesn't feel right. And somehow the room was kind of tipping and moving. And for the first time ever, I had what I look back now and recognise as a panic attack, but I ended up crouching on the floor, and I thought I was going to collapse or faint or die. And this was really scary for me. 15, 16 years old, and just my mum and dad were kind of a bit concerned and what was going on, but just felt really kind of like, what is that? I felt like I'd been struck out the blue by something, and I had no idea. And up until that moment, I'd kind of been all right, but now I started in my head thinking, I'm going away in a week. What if that happens again? What if that happens again? How will I cope? And I was shaking at the time. And I remember they sent for the doctor, and the doctor did a home visit. And I was under duvets and quilts downstairs on the sofa. The doctor came in and saw me and just shaking, and I was convinced I must have the flu, must have something physically wrong with me. And he examined me and said, no, you're all right. It's probably just anxiety. Like, you don't have a temperature. And I was saying, how could I not have a temperature? I'm like I'm fully dressed, and I'm under duvets, and I'm shaking, and I'm cold, and didn't get it. Didn't get how that could be anxiety related. And we scoot forward. I ended up going on this camp. But my symptoms and experience of everything was just getting way beyond anything that I could imagine. And my parents were getting sick of me bringing up, I'm not feeling well. And people would say, well, it's just nerves. Just a little bit of nerves. When you get on this camp, you'll probably be all right. You're out, school holidays, you're out of a structure, it's lack of routine, it's just take some deep breaths, you'll be all right. You just think positive, stop getting yourself so worked up about that. Just try not to think about it. Yet I was increasingly feeling weird, and there are sensations that to this day it's hard to describe. I didn't feel like I was in my body. I didn't feel like I was in my body. I felt like I was some sort of like that my body wasn't mine, was detached somehow from my awareness, that I was somehow at the front here, and this was all like a dome, and just my arms would be sort of moving, and they would kind of do what I wanted them to do, but it wouldn't feel like me doing them. And plus, whenever I sat down or stood up, it didn't feel like the room was stable. The room, it would feel like I was on a moving platform, and if I sat cross-legged on the floor, it would feel like I was literally at an angle like this, and I have to hold onto the floor to stop myself falling over. And I found myself on this camp, and I remember sitting there while they were doing some exercises or some supposed games, and all my friends were laughing and chatting amongst themselves, and I was just sitting desperately trying not to fall over. And I couldn't even verbalize it, but I genuinely thought, this is it. I am dying. I'm ill. I'm something seriously wrong with me, and I don't know how even to have the words to describe it. And I remember looking back and thinking, like, why didn't I, it sounds silly, but why didn't I appreciate being normal when I had the chance? And why me? And I did a lot of this kind of why thinking, and I'd look and berate myself for feeling, and why am I this way? And others seem to be normal. They're so lucky. They don't know how lucky they have it, and so on. And I said to some of the people that were managing the camps, the only thing I could find myself saying was, I don't feel well. I don't feel well, I feel ill. And I said kind of I had a headache, and I just couldn't even verbalize what was really going on. It seemed nuts, and I for some reason, maybe I didn't want them to think less of me, or think I was a bit weird, or... They sent me to the medical room, and the long and short of it, my parents, by the way, who were now on holiday abroad with my younger brother, it was the first family holiday I hadn't been on with them. I was opting to go on this camp with friends instead. But I found myself in this room by myself. It was a medical room where people would be sent if they were ill, and I spent the next 4 or 5 days there. Couldn't move. Had no one to talk to, and just a lot of time to really get myself worked up about all of this. And I just tried sleeping, and I had this was before iPads and iPhones and all that sort of stuff. I had nothing to do. And I think I ended up going, and my sister, who was on a separate camp, who's a bit older than me, came. They got in touch with her, and she came and picked me up and took me back to Leeds, where I ended up staying with my grandparents for a couple of weeks until my parents came home, who were, I think, a little bit cross because, how had I bothered my grandparents? I shouldn't be worrying them. But that was it. We kind of pushed that past us, and then, over the summer it continued, and then but I kept putting my hopes on, when I'm back at school, that will be better, because, there'll be a routine. They kept bandying this word around in my memory of routine. It's lack of routine and lack of structure, and you'll be all right. But it wasn't, and I ended up in school, and I was not in a good place. By this point, I never, since that summer camp, I hadn't felt like I was in my body at all, and I was convinced that I was seriously ill, and people wouldn't take me seriously, and it was a tough time. And one particular lesson, in the middle of the lesson, I remember looking down at my hands, and they'd all gone sort of sweaty and blotchy, and my heart was thumping in my chest, and I was again clinging to the desk so I wouldn't fall over. I couldn't concentrate on the lesson, but I just stood up and I ran out of the class, and the teacher looked a bit shocked. Everyone looked a bit shocked. I just ran out, and I went upstairs to see the deputy headmaster, and this guy was just amazing. Actually, no, I didn't. I didn't see the deputy headmaster. I blessed them. I ended up in front of and talking with the school receptionist who took people in. Who you'd have to go if you were feeling unwell. You'd go, and she'd let you into the medical room there. And I said, I don't feel very well. And she said, oh, what's the matter? Are you okay? Bearing in mind I had now 4 or 5 months of really not feeling okay and feeling unable to talk to anyone about it. This is what ostensibly was a total stranger said to me, are you okay? And I found, tumbling out of my mouth, everything that I'd been through over the last 5-6 months. Everything. And just sobbing and breaking down in tears, and this happened, and I don't feel like I'm in my body, and all of this stuff, and what's wrong with me, and I think I'm going to die, and And this poor receptionist, bless her, I remember her very clearly, and she just kind of looked at me and she said, I think I better get the deputy headmaster. And the deputy headmaster came and spoke to me, and I chatted with him, and he invited me up to his office, and he was this kind of incredibly charismatic character. Had a big influence on me in a very positive way. But he basically was just very supportive and gave me time and space to be able to explain what was going on, called my parents, and I think they ended up coming in and having a meeting with him where they kind of realised the extent to my struggle. And that kind of was a real breaking moment, because suddenly I had my parents who kind of got it. They kind of felt like they were part of this journey with me, and went to the doctors, and kind of a long story short, and there's lots of little pieces around all this, but I ended up going to a psychiatrist who put me on antidepressants. And to this day, it still bemuses me. I don't know why they put me on antidepressants, because I didn't feel depressed. I felt fed up of feeling anxious. And I'm not sure they made any difference at all, except the fact that it made me feel like there really was something wrong. And I ended up going and seeing a psychotherapist, and this lady was in one sense amazing, because she took a young lad who 16 at the time, I think, 16, and really felt like something was totally wrong with me and totally abnormal, and very quickly got me to see that these were panic attacks, and I was like a textbook case of anxiety. It didn't really help me in that sense, like get better, but it did make me feel a little bit more understood and a bit more normal. And so once a week, for a good long while, and I'm talking years, I would go and I would talk to her, and we would explore stuff, a lot around things like how are you feeling and how are you getting on, and distinctions around like parent Howard and child Howard. But I was still struggling. And the worst thing was, I probably had years and years and years of my life where I felt like I wasn't in my body, and I would have to cling to things so that I wouldn't fall down, and I would have jolts of panic, and I remember feeling like a failure. Like I'd be looking around at kids and youngsters, people my own age at the time, peers, and just feeling incredibly resentful, honestly, jealous and resentful that why did they get off scot-free? Why didn't they have these struggles? Because no one knew the suffering I was going through. No one. No one knew how difficult it was going through those things that I was going through. And that was my experience. Even to the point that I couldn't really leave the house. And when my parents said I'd take the dog for a walk, and I like to take the dog for a walk, that was like a huge thing for me. I couldn't walk down the street without freaking out, because I thought I would fall over or the ground would move and I would have to confront those feelings of not being in my body. And my therapist had told me, set a goal for myself. Can I make it just to the first lamppost down my street? And I did. I managed it the first day. It was a nightmare. I remember getting to the first lamppost and patting myself on the back, because that's what she told me I should do. I should celebrate those little successes. And even though I got there, you should have seen me. I was staggering like a drunk person to get there, and not feeling connected to my body, and just heart's pounding out my chest, and then staggering back. And then I'd berate myself. I'd feel really conflicted, because on the one hand, I'd be celebrating, I managed to do it, well done, I'm making progress. And on the other hand, I'd be berating myself. I'm 16 years old and I'm celebrating walking to the first lamppost down my street. This is nuts. How can I be so screwed up? And of course, I would do lots of thinking as well around the uncertainty of my future. How would I be able to take exams, and how would I do? And clearly I'm not fit to live away from home, and how will I ever go anywhere or do anything or go to university or get a job or survive, let alone meet someone that I'd like to share my life with, or find love, or find a partner. How could I ever do any of those things? And I used to honestly, genuinely, hand on heart, look back at the times that I'd supposedly been a normal functioning child in the world with very little problems, and just used to hark back to that. I want to be like that. If only I could go back to being like that. And pretty much you name it, I had it from an anxiety point of view. I suffered this time from things like air hunger. So it was the feeling that I couldn't get enough oxygen in, and I would be struggling to take it enough. And then after about, by the way, I have to say this, there's a caveat. What I'm reflecting on here and what I'm sharing with you is all my memory of it all. So it may not be wholly accurate. It's the way memory works, that, I'm just reconstructing stuff that happened, and it's the way I code it. So it may not be accurate, but it's how I remember it. And I remember it probably lasting about 3.5 years, week in, week out therapy of some regard with this lady. And I don't remember a huge amount of very practical tips, and I might be doing her a disservice, but my memory is I don't remember a huge amount of practical stuff that I could do to change the way I was thinking or feeling. But I do remember a session where I kind of got her theory as to why I was like I was. Which, by the way, I think the theory was that I'd had 5 operations. Sorry, was it 5 operations? Yeah, 5 operations in the first 10 months of my life. I think I was born with an inguinal hernia, and they had to do some repair stuff, and it got infected, and then happened on the other side, and so on. And I think the doctors had been told, certainly while all this was going on, that if I cried out loud, it wouldn't be. It might be a sign that I was in physical discomfort and distress, so that my parents shouldn't leave me to cry. And so her theory was that I hadn't grown up to become independent. I hadn't learnt very early on that. And so this was all about me becoming more independent. And it was kind of this horrible, oh, wow, I'm in the world myself. And listen, I don't know whether that's true. But I do remember thinking, well, what now? Like, now I know her theory as to why. So what? So what? Because as far as I was concerned, I was still not right. I was still having panic attacks and anxiety. Now, I don't want to misinterpret anything. I was better. I was doing better, but I wasn't there. I was by no means what I would say, fine. I still had a huge amount of hang-ups, and the feeling of not being in my body was still prevalent for large portions of time. But I was well enough that I could go off to university. And I went off to university, but that it kind of implies that I was much better. But no, like, things were really a battle for me, and I had to really push myself to do more every single day. And some days I was tired and I just didn't want to do that. But I went to university and met people and so on, and gradually, I wouldn't say I was better, but I remember thinking there's got to be something out there that doesn't focus on the why I am like I am, giving me conscious or analysis of understanding, but is more focused on how do I just change. And in the peripheral experience that I was having, I came across a guy called Anthony Robbins, who kind of an American motivational guru, life-changing speaker, and came across a book of his. And he talked about this thing called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I started looking into that a little more, and I liked some of the messages behind that. This idea that you could take control of your own thinking, and that you were in charge of it. It seemed to come across. And there was themes that ran through it, like it didn't matter why you were like you were. Your past doesn't equal your past. You can change, and you can change in the future. You can take control. You're not a victim to panic. But there was an idea that I'm doing panic. It was something, and if it's a process I can do, then maybe I could learn to undo it. And this kind of appealed. It was very different from stuff I'd come across before. And I started doing and signing up and going on NLP courses and training, and it made such a huge difference to me personally. And I couldn't even name the specific techniques that helped me, but I think it was the whole diametrical shift in my head of going, wow, this is something that I can do, I can do panic, which means if I can do it and it's a process I'm doing rather than it's done to me and I'm the victim of it, then maybe I can learn to change it. So I became more open to that possibility, and some of these ideas really helped. And, I have had these experiences where I've really suffered, and I think it was because of the technologies that I later came on that worked so well for me, things like hypnosis and hypnotherapy and mindfulness and self-inquiry and NLP, and all of these things merged together. And seeing how they blended for real with someone that really was, and I really was. There was a time, I remember my deputy head once saying to me, you'll look back one day at all this anxiety and you'll just think to yourself, you'll be grateful because it's made you stronger as an individual, and you'll be able to help people and so on. And I just thought to him, when he said that, I remember thinking, just shut up. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. How can he say that? I am just surrounded in this very dark place. You've got no clue at all what I'm going through. How can you possibly say that? But you know what? He was right. He was right. And I do look back now, and the work that I do and the ability that I have to help other people and give them the stuff that really works is born out of the fact that I had some suffering and some insight as to what it's really like to have gone through that. And it's something that is an ongoing practice for me, and there are still times where I'm not perfect. There are still things that pop up and come out and bite me on the bum in terms of my own mental state and stuff, but I am more armed now than I've ever been before, so that I don't fall for the same illusions that I was falling for previously. And that's why I enjoy my job, and that's why I enjoy doing it, because this is not a financial thing, and obviously that's important because I have a wife and kids to feed and so on. But it's primarily, I get to help people who are really struggling. And whether that's fears or phobias of things like dogs or cats or stuff that's bigger than that, or seems more encompassing, like generalized anxiety and severe panic attacks or depression or berating oneself about feeling worthless and so on. As well as all the stuff like habits and stopping smoking and stuff, and weight loss. But it's born out of a deep desire for people not to have the same level of suffering that I had and I went through. And every so often I reflect, and I'm doing it very publicly now, because I just think, you know what? I've been a huge believer in the past that mental health is important to talk about, that we shouldn't have taboos about it. And I also remember feeling very ashamed and that I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. And I was very private about what was going on for me. But I think it's time to really go out and say, look, it's okay to talk about it. And okay, maybe I am lucky that this is now in the past for me, and that predominantly most of the anxiety patterns, I'm not running in that same way anymore. But it's okay for people to share and to be okay to talk and to be open and to not have shame or taboo around mental or psychological suffering. So that's what I wanted to share today. And, I'd love to hear what you make of this. And if you've been having similar difficulties or challenges, or you can relate to this, then let me know, share in the comments. And I really appreciate your time in taking the time to let me, or to sort of, let me get all of this, out and shared. And I hope it's provided some value to you as well. Even if it's just that, if you're in a really low place and you hear me talking and know that it is possible for you to feel like there's no escape and there's no way out, but to know that it can feel that way and still there is a way out and you can come out of this, then that was worth me sharing this story. So I'm going to check out now. We might do some more lighthearted videos at some point soon, but thanks for tuning in. All the best.